And then I only knew when I crossed the line, the guy from the podium say, "Oh, we can see the big smile on his compatriot." And I'm like, "No, I'm just smiling because I finished the damn day and I'm happy about it." And then I see Yves Perret that's been working a lot with the Grand Prix, and he's like, "Why?" He's almost crying. He's like, "Hugo won." I'm like, "What? Hugo won?" And then there was Vauclair and Prudhomme on the side of the podium, and he's like, "Come in, come in." And so I managed. They brought me through behind the podium, and I managed to see Hugo, and it was it was a crazy moment.
Welcome to the Canadian Cycling Magazine podcast. I'm Matthew Piaro, and joining me is Matt Hansen. How's it going, Matt?
Real super. Thanks for asking.
Is that a South Park reference?
No, it's a me reference. It's a callback. I say this all the time.
I know you say it all the time, but I feel like it's from a song in a South Park movie episode.
Most of the things I say are derived from other people, so probably.
All right. Well, we cite our sources here sometimes when we can remember. The lead-in for this episode that listeners just heard was Antoine Duchesne. Now, the focus of this episode is Hugo Hulle and his historic Tour de France win, but I had to lead with Antoine because he is such a great talker. He's in this episode a bit, and what you heard there was the I'm not going to say censored version, but the version without some cuss words. You're going to hear the cuss words in this episode.
Bit of a potty mouth he has.
He uses his colorful metaphors. But the focus of this episode, it's a story I've been really excited to tell. It is the story of Hugo Hulle's Tour de France win this past summer. But before we get into that, Matt, how are you doing?
Like I said, I'm real super.
All right, we covered that. You're super. There's nothing to add to that.
I'm riding inside, loving the winter, loving riding Zwift. It's just so great.
Yeah, I'm always careful or hesitant to complain about winter here in Southern Ontario because the rest of the nation, you get more winter than we do usually. But winter's a bit early here in Toronto, eh?
Well, 2 weeks ago it was 25 degrees and now it's snow, so who knows?
Yeah, most of us are full Zwift mode. But you know what? I need to check the weather out west in Victoria for this weekend.
Big bike race,
Cyclocross Nationals. I'm excited to see that. It's been a long time. The Cyclocross Nationals has been getting punked by the pandemic a lot.
Yeah, it's great to see it back. After 2019 was the last time, so it's I think it sounds like everyone's pretty excited to get back there and, finally have the cross nats.
Yeah, you've spoken or been in touch with a few riders. Who are some of the people you've spoken to in the lead up to Cross Nationals?
Well, I think there's two big ones, Magali Rochette and Sydney McGill. They're not going to be going, and it's pretty straightforward. It's just the travel. They're going to be in Europe. They're already in Europe. Magali, as we know, has had a rough year. She's been sick and she's had a hard time with her fitness. She's finally getting back on form now, but she's decided to opt out of it, and she was pretty bummed not to be able to go because, as we know, we haven't had it there for 2 years. Although I will say, those who are lucky enough to have one in 2019, they basically got to keep their jersey for 700 days, which is the only plus side of all these cancellations. But alas, she'll be passing that on to someone else because she won't be there. But it makes sense with all the travel issues that she would skip it. So, but she was pretty bummed.
Yeah, it's really difficult for Canadian riders who want that Euro experience and are chasing UCI points and all that stuff. Because travel has just become a tougher thing to manage in the last, of course, 3 years, however long it's been.
Yeah, and although it's an amazing location in Victoria and the weather's probably going to be great or relatively great, better than the rest of Canada, it's a bit of a hike to go from Montreal or the East Coast to BC.
Our little country here is bigger than Europe. Even getting around here is a challenge. Well, we have a team assembled for covering Cross Nationals. At the lead of that team is Terry McCall, web editor, mountain bike expert. And actually, to call him just our mountain bike editor is a bit of a disservice because he's fluent in all things riser bar and curly bar. but he will be there. So will photographer Nick, who's done a lot of work with us in the past. And so please, listeners, watch our website, watch our socials for Cyclocross Nationals coverage. Let's get into the story of Hugo Huule. Everyone, I think, knows his backstory, the tragic backstory. 10 years ago, his brother Peric was out for a jog and was struck and killed. What attracted me to this story is like all good stories. It's about cycling, and it's about more than cycling. And I really sunk my teeth into this one, and I'm really excited to share it with you, Matt. I know you haven't heard the pod yet.
No, I'm excited to hear this one, actually, because, that vision of him with pointing his hand in the sky was something else when he won.
But you have had previews of a lot of this material because I've been wrestling with it for weeks now. So, yeah, I'm really excited to share it with everyone.
Finally.
Finally, thank you. Without further ado, let's get into the inside story, a deep dive into Hugo Houle's historic Tour de France win. This past summer, something fantastic happened. You remember it, of course. During stage 16 of the Tour de France, Hugo Huule, a rider from Saint-Perpétue, Quebec, escaped from the breakaway. He was about 39 kilometers from the finish in Foix and had the Muro de Péguerre in front of him. Could Huule take the win? Well, if you're listening to this podcast, I'm pretty sure you know what happened. You watched the stage on July 19th, maybe on the sly at work, or that evening after spending the day trying to avoid spoilers. You were tense as Huule got closer and closer to the finish. Then, Hugo Huule won a stage of the Tour de France. His win was historic. Only one other Canadian has taken a Tour stage. That was Steve Bauer in 1988. But the victory was not only a big deal in, say, the regular way, if there is anything regular about such a rarefied feat. The win for Huule had a deep personal significance. One of the first things he said after crossing the line was, "This one is for my brother." In this episode, I speak not only with Huule, but Steve Bauer, his director sportif on Israel Premier Tech, and Houle's teammate Michael Woods, who was instrumental in the stage win. Also, Antoine Duchesne provides some insights. He was at the Tour as part of Groupama FDJ's squad. He's a good friend of Houle's as well as his former roommate. Before I delve into the victory, there's the tragedy, which happened in December 2012. Huule had just returned to his family home in Quebec from a training camp in Spain with his new team, AG2R La Mondiale. He had a chat with his younger brother, Peric.
I was with AG2R in the training camp, and then when I come back just before Christmas, after the December camp, I come back home and I sat down with my brother a little bit just to share what I experienced with my first training camp with the professional team in Europe. And then we had a talk, and then he went for a run and never came back. He got hit by a driver from the back in a small village where we live, and just died under the impact. And that was it. Everything went pretty fast forward from there, and it was a big challenge for me and also for my family to overcome this kind of I would say shock, who lasts for quite long. And step by step, you kind of start to live again with it. And now I'm I feel okay with it, comfortable. But I always think about him, and he have kind of. I made the goal to try to win a stage in the Tour for him, and now I did. So that bring me even more emotion when I won the stage, and I think it would never be something will come close to this, whatever I win again in my life, from the emotion side of it. And that's part of my story now. And the reason I talk about it is when it happened, it's really hard moment, but what I can say is with time you can overcome it, and life still go on and you can enjoy. But on the moment, it's always quite painful.
That pain followed Huule to France, where he set up for the 2013 season. That was a tough year. He was mostly alone in a new country, doing his best to train and race at road cycling's highest level. The next year, he and Antoine Duchesne moved into a duplex in Saint Restitut, France. The friends made for a bit of an odd couple. Huule was the highly disciplined one. After all, he did take law enforcement studies at Cégep and could have gone on to Quebec's police academy. Duchesne was the more easygoing, run-on-instinct one. They complemented each other well. I asked Duchesne about Houle's goal to win a Tour de France stage. To me, I thought it was a totally noble goal, but was it realistic? Was it something a domestique like Huule could shoot for? He had ridden in service of Romain Bardet and Oliver Nason when he was on AG2R La Mondiale, and later Jakob Fuglsang and Miguel Angel Lopez at Astana. At 2 Olympic Games and multiple World Championships, Huule looked out for Michael Woods. Sure, Huule knew the Tour well. He'd ridden it every year since 2019. But before July 19th, Houle's notable wins were 2 national time trial championships in 2015 and 2021, and gold at the 2015 Pan Am Games time trial. So, a Tour de France stage? Was that really in the cards for him? Duchesne saw it was a real possibility.
The way he's been racing the last 2 years, he's been up there. To win a stage, you need to be really strong, but you don't need, like in a Grand Tour, there's always going to be opportunity, especially in second and third weeks. And if you're that level that can actually fight for those breaks, because at the end, it's the same 20, 25 guys in the last 10 stages that are actually able to go fight for it, outside of the GC guys. So if you're able to have that level, then in between those 20 guys, everyone can win it, by how the race is going to go. And for the last year, 2 years has been showing that he was part of these guys. So I completely believed in it. But I told him during that tour, I remember on the first week, after maybe, I don't know, his first breakaway or something like that, I'm like, now don't be an idiot trying to go in the breakaway in the stage of the Granon, the 2 hardest stage in the Alps. It's the GC gonna try to go, don't screw yourself. It's gonna be really hard race. So especially how good you're climbing, if you take the Gruppetto, it's gonna be super easy for you. Take those 2 days super easy, and then there's this stage. It's gonna go all the way, and you can win those one. And the day we get out of the Alps, he finished third. So and he really did it well. We finished together, I think, those two days in the Alps. And for me, I was doing really great, and for him, he was just sitting on. But yeah, it was. So he really did it, and he saved himself in the right moment, and he was there when when it was time to kill.
Throughout the 2022 season, Michael Woods saw firsthand just how well his teammate was performing.
I think just this year in general indicated that he was ready to make a big jump. To finishing 13th at Paris-Nice, particularly, was a great indicator, particularly because he was the last guy on our team, only guy on our team to finish. So no support in running that. Then I raced with him for the first time this season at Pays Vasco, towards the Basque Country. And there he was just flying. He finished 4th to some really strong guys. Julien Alaphilippe won, but he was right there in the mix. And he'd been helping me all day that day too. Even at our team camp, he won the time trial at our team camp. You could see he was more confident than ever, Hugo Houle.
Steve Bauer, who was the lead director sportif during Stage 16, has worked with Huule for years. Early in Houle's career, he had a spot on SpiderTech powered by C10, which was led by Bauer. In 2021, the two were on Astana, and they both came over to Israel Premier Tech for this past season. Bauer also noticed Houle's top fitness and increased confidence out on the road.
Throughout the tour, he was confident that he had the shape, and I think we all gave him that confidence that he was in form. You could see it. He had that too. He had that race picked out in the Pyrenees. There was one race that kind of suited like a breakaway, a certain chance in a breakaway. And he said that, you could have an inkling that he's going to go all in that day, right? And it was also part of the plan to have Woodsy and him, Michael Woods and Hugo, as priority in that breakaway that day. So it was he was honed in for it. He was ready to go, and so I think that focus, all the preparedness, all the experience of years and years, they come down to kind of like a fine pointed edge, right? And that was that day for Hugo.
Stage 16 was right after the second rest day of the Grand Tour. Before that, there were 3 lumpy stages that led riders eastward, away from the Alps. As Duchesne mentioned, Huule was third on one of those days. On stage 13, he got away with Mads Pedersen and Fred Wright, with Pedersen taking the 3-up sprint to the line. Stage 16 marked the Tour's first day in the Pyrenees. Duchesne, who was protecting his teammate David Gaudu, remembered how the day started.
Well, that stage went actually kind of weird because we were actually everyone was expecting crosswind at the start, and there was no way to get any crosswind actually. But the start was super nervous. The neutral start, like everybody was fighting, everybody was completely stressed out to be well placed, and he ended up there was just a split, and 20 guys got away by just. Well, nobody actually, there was nothing happening. There's 20 guys that got away and the road was blocked behind. I think I saw Hugo jumping across as one of the last guy, like just not being on the first move, and he saw it and he just went again by himself and he bridged back alone.
The big breakaway actually contained 27 riders. The group was set after about 7 kilometers of racing. It mostly held together until the second last climb of the day, which was the 11.4 kilometer Pont de l'Air that had an average grade of 7%. Damiano Caruso attacked. Woods followed because he wasn't going to let a rider who was second at the 2021 Giro d'Italia get away. Woods crested the climb with 6 other riders. Huule, however, wasn't there.
But we all kind of were just looking at each other, and no one was super keen on taking up the pace and pushing really hard. So we rode a relatively conservative descent. But I think it speaks volumes to the resilience of Hugo. He didn't give up, because I've been in that situation before, and I know a lot of other riders have been in this situation before where they've been dropped. It seems like the race is over, and it's so easy to just be like, okay, I'm going to sit up now. My day's done. My work's done. I'm going to wait for the peloton to get in. I'll just cruise into the finish because I've got, 5 more days of racing still. But Hugo didn't. He kept on pushing, managed to crest the climb not that far behind, and then also send the descent, go super fast. Hugo is an exceptional bike racer. There's a reason why, there's I don't want to jinx him, but Hugo rarely has a crash. He's got a really good sixth sense. He's got great bike handling skills, and his descending abilities are quite strong as well. So he ripped the descent, caught back onto us, and that was where actually he was able to distance himself. We moved to the front, and he took a couple corners fast, and I just decided I was going to let him slip away, because I thought that we'd be at an advantage if I did that. And sure enough, we were.
It was not planned to do like this. It's just the way it came. I got a bit drop in the first of the 2 climb, maybe 15, 20 seconds on the top, and I was able to come back in the downhill and drop everyone. And then when I come back, Mike made a gap. They let me go away with 10 seconds, and then I just attack as hard as I could to set the table for Mike, because as I was dropping the first climb, I said, okay, I better keep the pressure on and go full, and Mike can sit in the wheel and we'll have an easier time. So if Mike would not have been there, I think I would never attack like this.
When Hugo went, you could feel the lethargy in the group, like the complacency in the group. Like guys were just fatigued and didn't necessarily want to follow things. They wouldn't want to have to take up a chase. And so I really felt like that was a good moment to go. And so did Hugo when he went. And the minute I saw that no one was taking up the chase, I just jumped on the radio and said, go, 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 go.
Once Huule got away from the group, he had to face the Mur de Péguerre by himself. It's a 9.3 kilometer climb with ramps with more than 15% grades that come toward the end. Huule had to manage his effort, but still ride hard enough to stay ahead of the group.
When I attacked, I went hard, but hard thinking what was coming up. So I did the first part of the climb where it was not super steep. I tried to stay always around 400 watts. And then when I hit the steep part, then I was just like, I was also surprised myself. Like the first part of the climb was maybe, I don't remember how many K it was, maybe 5 or 6, whatever. But it was more rolling, and that time I could keep the gap. I was surprised at the beginning when I started the climb. I had 1 minute, and then they probably 4K in. I was still like 55 seconds, 45 seconds. It was not really going down. So I understood I was like able of staying away. So then I focused on the last 2K of the climb where it was really, really steep. And then there I just went as hard as I could, also thinking I had to go to the top. And let's say the last 500 meters, I was starting to be cold because it was really heat. So it was really, really on the limit of what I could handle. And when I passed the top of the climb with 30 seconds, I know I could do it. I have seen the video of the race that they passed there like a few years ago. So the night before, we checked the video with Chris Froome, who was at the time, I think, chasing yellow jersey. So I know the climb, the downhill was super fast, and I would need to pedal all the way down. So, okay. I know that in this kind of downhill, I could hold to the group behind because it's super fast, and I'm also have some good skill on the flat.
After Huule crested the Mur de Péguel, there was a danger that lurked on the descent. Steve Bauer knew about it because he had scouted the stage in advance. For the record, he also knew it would be a hard, chaotic start and that the breakaway would form early. The former star rider is a sharp director, too. If you remember the stage, you'll know that Matteo Jorgensen either didn't know about this hairy section or was simply pushing too hard as he tried to catch Huule. Woods was adding pressure onto Jorgensen as the Canuck followed the U.S. rider closely. Here's what Bauer knew from his stage reconnaissance.
It was a tight blind turn. You came very quickly down a straightaway and then into this, it almost seemed like a little village, a couple houses, and it was very blind, tight and blind. And it was the only one that was really like that in the whole descent. So it was a bit odd. It was the one most dangerous corner of the descent that I pointed out to the guys in the meeting. And when I was in the car, like I reminded Hugo of the danger of that turn, and also that Mike Woods, as they approached that sharp blind bend, and that's the one that Jorgensen crashed on.
Woods learned about the dangers of the Pyrenean descents the hard way, so he was able to play things just right.
Yeah, I crashed on a descent quite similar to the one that we were on in 2021. They're just often at this time of year quite greasy, a bit of gravel, just because it's quite a bit drier in the Pyrenees in general. Yeah, there's often just loose gravel. You saw it even on the crash that Pogacar had a few days later. They're also far less predictable. They don't follow the same type of pattern that they do in the Alps, in the French Alps, at least, not the Italian, but the French Alps. You have descents that are pretty consistent. You often aren't going to be surprised by corners, whereas in the Pyrenees, they are a bit more of the Italian style descent where they just don't follow rhyme or rhythm. You can be coming around one corner that seems fine, and then all of a sudden it's a diminishing radius corner, and it really catches you off guard. That's why when I was following Jorgensen on the way down on this stage, I knew he was really pushing the limits of his ability, and I knew the descent. I knew the descent could catch us off guard, and so I just gave him a bit of a gap just to make sure, and it was the smart move to make in the end.
After Jorgensen's crash, things looked really good for Huule and Woods. 2 Canadians, 1 and 2 on the road. Michael Storer and Valentin Madouas, both teammates of Duchesne's, were a minute 27 behind Huule. Woods had to decide if he should power on in an attempt to join his teammate. The two could work together, but the race-savvy Woods had other factors to weigh.
I knew that I had a shot at just bridging across to him, but my big concern actually was what would happen if I came across to Hugo and we started putting vehicles between ourselves and Jorgensen. It's something that less thought of, but the way the finish worked with that long 20K false flat descent, if we had 45 seconds to a minute on Jorgensen, you start putting vehicles between there, and if he takes a couple turns a lot faster, then although let's say we have 45 seconds on him, their vehicles between him and us, he's actually only 25 seconds behind the vehicles. And then the vehicles start making a bit of a wake from their in the wind with the air, start making the air a bit easier to follow, and then it's quite easy to come back. A good example of that was Jorgensen crashing and him easily getting back onto me. Just all it takes is 2 or 3 vehicles between the two of you, and maybe you have 10 seconds on the guy. He's actually going to get back on you, no problem. And if Hugo just managed to stay away, he'd stay away. But I think it felt like the biggest threat to us losing was me actually jumping across and then having Matteo get that a bit of a suck on the way across.
Now, just to be clear, Woods isn't suggesting that Jorgensen would have been sitting right behind vehicles to get a massive draft, the way riders do with team cars often when they are trying to chase back onto the peloton after a crash. No, the effect Woods is describing is a bit more subtle. The vehicles that are allowed between riders, when there's a big enough gap, can still prime or make the air a little easier for riders behind to pass through, even if they are at a distance. This primed air is what Woods was concerned about. The racing continued, yet Bauer, whose judgment on the stage almost seems clairvoyant, had a sense of the final outcome possibly much sooner than the riders.
From the time that the time gap, he held on to a very solid time gap on the steepest part of that final climb. And Mike Woods and Jorgensen were the last 2 surviving chasers that I really felt he had a chance. And at that point, I reiterated several times that he was going for the win to encourage him that, it was him and the rest now. It was just him that he could, if he had it in him, he would win the race. And then it really solidified the victory when Jorgensen crashed, because there's always a chance that in the final 15 kilometers that something could happen. It's never over until it's over. So when Jorgensen crashed, it really provided a buffer of success. And even in the last 5 kilometers, I was telling Hugo to relax, and nobody was coming back. But as the athlete, you never want to believe it's over. So he kept pushing, I think, until the final kilometer, where he really realized then he finally had it.
At about 2 kilometers to go for Huule, Woods was giving the TV camera his signature thumbs up. He knew, too, that his teammate had it. For Huule, well, Bauer called it, the athlete was cautious.
Maybe with 2-3K to go, but 2K before was always 30 seconds, 36 seconds, and also like the way I get the gap from the car, the communication is always a delay. So at the moment I saw the board, I think with 3K to go was 1 minute on the board, and I said, okay, I just got this, I'm going to win. And from there I started to enjoy a little bit more, but I was still full gas because I say if something happened, I need time.
Then Huule began to think of his brother Peric. In the closing meters, it seemed as if he was trying to pull something out from under his jersey. Huule isn't particularly religious, but he does race with a cross around his neck. Not long after Peric's death, Louis Garneau, that's the former elite cyclist and head of the Quebec Cycling Equipment Company, got a small cross blessed, and he presented it to Hugo. It was for luck and protection in races. It became a part of Hugo's race kit, and it always reminded him of his brother.
Then the last 500 meter, I would say I was really thinking about him. Or the last K, maybe. The last part is really where I started to realize, and I was quite emotional. Just so happy I could do that, and I was still struggling to believe what I just did.
One of the first people Huule hugged after the win was John Adams, an Israel Premier Tech soigneur who had also worked on Spider Tech. He knew Houle's story well. Then Woods, who finished third on the stage, came screaming up and almost started hugging Huule before coming to a complete stop. The news got to Houle's friend Duchesne about 20 minutes later. Before you hear this next clip, a warning. You're about to hear some cussin'. You can skip ahead 90 seconds, but I don't think you should. you'll miss Duchene's infectious enthusiasm.
And then I only knew when I crossed the line, the guy from the podium say, "Oh, we can see the big smile on his compatriot," and I'm like, "No, I'm just smiling because I finished the damn day and I'm happy about it." And then I see Yves Perret that's been working a lot with the Grand Prix, and he's like, "Why?" He's almost crying. He's like, "Hugo won." I'm like, "What? Hugo won?" What the fuck? And then there was Vauclair and Prudhomme on the side of the podium, and he's like, "Come in." And so I managed. They brought me through behind the podium, and I managed to see Hugo, and it was it was a crazy moment when he gets out of the van and he see me. So we're hugging, and I'm just, man, you won a tour, and I'm almost crying, and I'm just, you did it. You did it. And I see his cross, and I'm like, why you did it. And then him, as usual, like he starts talking to me about how the race went and what he did, and like super again formal. I'm like, I don't give a shit what you did, how it happened. Just, man, you won the goddamn stage. And I was like, yeah, it was really nice to be able to be part of it and see him after the line. It was a really beautiful moment.
I cried when Guillaume Boivin came on the bus after and told me like he dedicated to his brother, and that kind of I started crying. And then again when we were sitting around at the table, Hugo was telling the story of his brother again, especially to guys who are less familiar with the story, like on the team. Aside from Guillaume and I, none of the guys really knew about his brother passing. He recounted the story, and I think there weren't many dry eyes at the dinner table.
There was a lot of media, a lot of people I know also. That day cost me a new iPhone because the battery just kind of burned out. My phone was closed and it was still burning when I touched it, like if you leave it in the sun. And so I killed my battery that day. I think I had around 2,000 messages if I put all the different apps together. And it was quite special. I think at the moment I didn't understood the impact of this in North America, especially Quebec and Canada. And also when I went to the Grand Prix Cycliste this year, I could see that people, they really recognize this performance.
There was an outpouring of joy within the team and beyond. For Huule, usually a reserved person, there was his own outpouring of emotions. It was understandable. After 10 years, he had finally transformed a family tragedy into something else. I asked Woods about carrying loss into competition. In 2018, roughly 2 months before that year's Vuelta a España, Michael Woods' wife, Ellie, gave birth to a stillborn baby boy who the couple named Hunter. In their grief, the two vowed to honor the baby they had lost by truly living their lives to their fullest. Woods noted a change in his racing. The public saw it on stage 17 of the 2018 Vuelta, where Woods won his first Grand Tour stage. Afterward, he revealed he'd been racing for Hunter. I asked Woods if the victory changed his relationship with the tragedy.
That's a good question. I don't know if it changed my relationship with the tragedy, but it certainly, to me, it was certainly just a massive moment of catharsis, particularly because for 2 months prior to his death, I hadn't really talked about it aside from with my family and close friends. But also, I obviously cried and had a really tough time in the week after his death. But instead of really focusing on my grief, I focused a lot on the training that I needed to do, that I felt like I needed to do to honor what my wife and I said we'd set out to do, which was do things to their best and their fullest. Also, in him passing, I didn't know what else to do in terms of just trying to make people feel better, including my wife, my family. I wanted to do something that, obviously I couldn't bring him back, but just make everyone feel a bit better. And so I saw that as, winning a big race and honoring him was being a way of doing that. When I was actually able to achieve that goal and get the victory, it was a massive unleashing of emotions. And to this day, when I think back on that stage, it's easy to get a bit teary for me.
When I spoke with Huule for this episode, he was at his place in Monaco. It was September, after the Quebec Grand Prix races. In those events, Houle's stunning 2022 form was gone. He needed to rest and reset for the next year. The effects of the win in July were still with him. And also, things were different.
Well, it brings back a lot of emotion. Now I have to set new goals for the future to stay, to keep the same motivation. And every day I will go train out and push hard, or I would think about it. So now I have to find a new way to stay motivated. It just brings so much happiness. As much as it hurt when he leave us, then that moment just become even more intense and more crazy. Like if I just win a stage in the tour, it's one thing. You're quite happy, but it's bring another emotion on top of it, and that's what make that day so special.
I should leave things there, but I have to add one more story from Huule. It shows a little more of the poetry of his win. The way he took the stage is probably just the way his brother, Peric, would have wanted him to.
Yeah, when I was younger, I looked at Tour de France also with him, and we always appreciate, those big breakaways who strong guys remain away from the bunch, and that's what makes cycling race interesting in the Grand Tour, where the GC guy, they look a little bit more at each other, but the other guy tried to get the stage, and I always enjoy watching those stages with my brother when we were younger. So that I did basically that goes in the break and goes solo for so long, and it works.
And that's the episode. It's written and edited by me, Matthew Piaro. I had help from Matt Hansen. Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
I also had help from Terry McCall. This episode is produced by Adam Killick. Also thanks to Ontario Creates for its support. Well, Matt, usually we get a bit silly here in the outro, but as you just heard, we ended on a pretty powerful note, eh?
Yeah, that was a pretty deep story, and I think it's I don't have any jokes now.
Yeah, no, neither do I. I really appreciated Michael Woods' insights there. He, not only does he have great insights into racing, as he always does when we've chatted with him, but to mine that emotional territory again, both him and Hugo, going back to their life's tragedies and mulling them over and analyzing them. I really appreciated them sharing that with us.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the thing you said about stories that are bigger than cycling, and that's they both pretty much hit those in the head.
Yeah. Well then, let's sign off. And when I say everyone ride safe, I really mean it. Ride safe. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.